There. Welcome, guys. We are going to get started in just a few minutes, right about at 4:30. But in the meantime, while you guys are waiting, if you want to submit some questions for our panelists, please do so. Just click the Q&A button in your Zoom toolbar, which should be the two speech bubbles, and submit your questions, and we will go through them as best we can. My name is Jason. I am with the Office of Admission, and one of the windows is my colleague Roberto Pena, who will also be helping host this. But we're going to get out of the way. We're going to be helping moderate with the questions, but as much as possible, we're going to let our panelists speak and let you know or let them answer your questions. So again, if you guys could just start submitting those questions, just click that Q&A box and submit them, and we'll go. If you guys don't have any questions, this will be real awkward. But it'll be okay. We have some prepared just in case. But yeah.
Cool. So our first question is, can you speak to dorm culture? Do you think you mostly meet or spend time with the people in your dorm, or is it easy to meet people outside of the people you're living with?
And just quickly before we start with the first question, do you guys mind introducing yourselves?
Yeah, we should. Sorry.
Roberto and I, Roberto and I are going to get out of the way now. Thank you guys, and hopefully other people will fill in. For those of you who just came in and didn't hear the instructions, please submit your questions through the Q&A tool. It's two speech bubbles. Just go ahead and click on that and submit them. And after our panelists do their introductions, we will go ahead and start the Q&A. A quick note, one of our panelists, Dr. Valenzuela, one of the deans in our Division of Student Affairs, will be joining us a little later. So in the meantime, if we do receive any questions that are more directed towards a representative of the Division of Student Affairs, we may sort of pocket them and then bring them up later once Dr. Valenzuela joins us. But in the meantime, introductions, please.
Cool. So my name is Ginger. I am a junior at Harvey Mudd. I am an engineering major. I've lived in North dorm for the past 3 years, but for my senior year, I will be moving to Sontag, where I will be a dorm proctor. And previously at North, I was a dorm mentor, which are both res life positions I'm sure we'll touch on throughout this panel.
Okay, I'll go next. Sorry about that. My name's Becca. I'm currently a sophomore, will be a junior next year. I'm a molecular biology major. And I was a Drinkword mentor this past year and will be for next year as well.
And I'm Maurice. I'm also a junior. I'm a CS major, and I lived at Lind my freshman and sophomore year. This year I lived at Atwood, and next year I'm going to be a proctor at Lind.
Cool. So I guess we should go back to our first question. Do either Becca or Maurice want to take a shot at it first? About dorm culture, do you mostly meet or spend time with people in your dorms, or is it easy to meet people outside of your dorm?
Sure, I can take that one first, and we can all, I think, speak to that. So definitely when you move into your dorm, you become involved in the dorm culture, and as a first year, it's a great way to meet fellow first-year students as well as upperclassmen. I know that I developed relationships with people both in my year and outside of my year living in Drinkword as a frosh, and I really loved it. But that being said, you're not secluded to your dorm. So just because I lived in Drinkword doesn't mean that I didn't meet people from North or Lind or any of the other 8 residential halls. So You are not secluded to your dorm, but it is a great way to like take the first step towards making friends at Mudd.
I think one of the cool things about our res halls also is that all of them have students across all 4 years. So what this means is like we don't have any like freshman only dorms. So as the first year, when you first move in, you'll sort of be naturally part of an environment with upperclassmen. And I really enjoyed that because it gives you the opportunity to make friends with them in like a super natural way. And then when it comes to things like class registration or like sort of needing advice or getting involved on campus, upperclassmen are really great about like bringing you in and sort of showing you around and stuff like that. And also lots of people move and lots of people don't move. Also, as part of a res life team in a dorm, we actually organize inter-dorm activities on purpose to sort of encourage people. And then particularly when you go into your second or third year at Mudd, when you sort of start studying your major more specifically, you also end up with like a really strong network of friends within your major, which often is completely unrelated to your dorm. Because like, so me as an engineering major, I have a lot of friends within that major that I talk to and hang out with who don't live in my dorm.
Yeah, and a little bit more about meeting people outside your dorm. A lot of the stuff during orientation is with random people, or is specifically with people not in your dorm, so you can meet them, so you can meet more people. And also, you're not restricted to your dorm. I lived in Lynn my freshman year, but I spent a lot of time in Drinkward, and I went to a lot of Drinkward events because it's a much welcoming environment, and you're welcome anywhere.
Awesome. So our next question is about roommate selection. So the question is, when do students receive information about choosing roommate or completing a survey? And I think we can maybe also talk about how roommates work at Mudd in relation to that. So I don't think we know the dates on those logistics, but I imagine maybe, I don't know if Jason wants to speak to that or if we can answer it when Dean Marco's here. He probably knows.
Just typically, sometime I think you'll get your form probably sometimes in late May, June, because I know they try to have your roommate information by like July or like sometime in July. So around there.
Yeah, I wouldn't stress about it. I would just make sure when you do receive the survey, like definitely fill it out. Mudd is really unique because we only have around 200 incoming students. Our fresh might even be like 230 or something exactly. And it's cool because we actually have humans that read all of your forms to match you with your roommate because we are privileged to like be able to do that. And then from there, they'll match you like manually with like a dorm. So it's a really great process. For me personally, I loved my roommate and my dorm, and I've lived there obviously these past 3 years. And she has been my roommate with me the entire time. And next year, we are both moving to Sontag together. So I personally had a really great time with that process, and it worked well for me.
Yeah, I think speaking further to the process that you go through for getting a roommate, it's a pretty extensive survey. So like Ginger mentioned, the people who are reading it do a really great job with matching others. Personally, I haven't heard of any issues with people having issues with their roommate. It's just that we try really hard to make sure that you're going to have a roommate that you match well with and that you like want to spend time with. So yeah, don't stress too much about it. It's kind of like a fun survey to go through, and then it's very exciting to get your roommate information.
There are like short answer questions and stuff, like what kind of music do you like listening to? What do you like to do for fun? So like it gets pretty deep.
And yeah, and then I think that question we can bring up again when Dean Mark or Dr. Valenzuela comes in later and joins the panel. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that question.
Yeah, so the next question is, what's the earliest an out-of-state student can move in, and can the office accept packages for move-ins? Out-of-state students definitely can come in a little bit earlier, just like a couple days. And also the office can take packages. But all this information will be on the orientation website later. So I would say check there.
Yeah, Harvey Mudd's mailroom is also really amazing for accepting move-in stuff. We have like carts and like different like push things. So like they obviously won't carry your package to your room for you, but if you show up with like your name and your ID, they will totally help you out with that. So, but again, like from a logistics perspective, that information will all be on the orientation website, like Maurice described. I guess we also have a question about proctors and how do you become a proctor, and I guess compensation. So in terms of compensation, I think we receive discount like off of our room and board, and that sort of applies to our just portal itself. I think we can maybe also use this opportunity to talk about like what proctors and mentors are at Mudd within the dorms. So proctors, it's like just an interview process. You apply, and then I guess you get selected. But in terms of like in a broader sense, at every res hall we have mentors and proctors, and so mentors are typically sophomores or juniors, and it's a volunteer position, and it's sort of someone described it to me this way, which I liked, is like designated friend. And so it's like when you come in as a first year, they're sort of meant to be your like first friend, the first Mudder you might meet, and they know about a lot of different campus resources. They keep an eye out for you. If you want advice, you can go to them. And then proctors are sort of above that, in that typically a team of 1 to 2 proctors will work with a team of anywhere from 3 to 5 mentors, depending on the size of the dorm. And they'll are essentially have more training in things like emergency response and like safety and stuff like that, but also oversee the mentors in the incoming class and the whole dorm in general. Becca and Maurice, you have more to add.
Yeah, I think you covered it. That's like exactly what we do. You know, mentors and proctors are here to support you guys, as well as the rest of the dorm. A great thing also about the mentor position is, as a first year student, you're actually assigned a mentor that works with you specifically. So that you might be in a group of anywhere from, I think, 3 to 7 or 8 other frosh, and you work with one mentor. So that way you have somebody who's dedicated to working specifically with you. So yeah, we make sure that you're not going to be alone at Mudd. People are watching out for you.
I'm just going to interject here. It's a pretty big deal. These guys are big deals on this panel. I mean, I think for me, just mentors and proctors are just really, I think, strong. They strongly reflect the kind of community we have on campus, and the kind of responsibility that students take in looking out and caring for each other. And they are those people within the residence halls. They help keep things going. They help take care of people. And it's it's a more strenuous interview process than you apply and are selected. But it is. I did want to just interject there to say that, but I also am I'm stopping the share so that the background will disappear. We do have a good number of questions. I want to again just ask people, folks who have joined us, thank you for being here today. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A tool. It's the 2 speech bubbles. Just go ahead, click on that, and submit your questions, and we'll go through them. But I'm going to stop the share so that I think for this will allow people to at least see your faces a little bit bigger. So that was all. Please continue.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if I were to add one more thing about proctors and mentors, I think it's really cool because a lot of Mudd student life culture is really strong. Like people really participate in it and are a member of the community. And we really have like a strong sense of like belonging and self-governance to that end. So people sort of take pride in their space, their community. And because of that, proctors and mentors play sort of like a really critical role as like sort of being an in-between between students, and often like DSA, which is the Dean of Student Affairs, and that office sort of like a large part of the community, and being able to like function fluidly between those 2 positions and be like a really good bridge. So I think that's also really important.
And I think one final thing to add is that A lot of colleges do have RAs, so you have people who are not, students or who are older students living in the dorm and kind of like watching over you, making sure you don't break rules. Proctors obviously are typically all seniors. They're all MUD students. So, they've lived your experience and they're not there to get you in trouble. They're more there to make sure everybody's staying safe and feeling welcome in the dorm. And same thing for mentors.
Sounds good. The next question was, are there different cultures for each dorm? And that's definitely a yes. Maybe I can talk about a couple of them. So Lind, generally one of the party dorms. There's a speaker suite and they play music pretty much all day. You see people outside on the field playing games, like throwing a football, playing spike ball, stuff like that. And we also do like a lot of, we also every week have cookies baked in the kitchen and just talk. And it's kind of a party dorm, but it can also be really chill. And we have a super nice lounge. Atwood's kind of similar. Lynn and Atwood are both suite dorms. So like some of the dorms are halls where it's like, 10 to 30 people or something to a hall and you guys share a bathroom. And some of them are suites where you have 6 to 8 people in a suite together. And I think that's really cool about Lynn and Atwood. People.
Yeah,
I can talk about drink words.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, you go first, Ginger.
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll talk about drink words since that's where I've lived for the past 2 years. And we can, I guess if you guys are interested, we can go through each dorm, or if you guys just want to get a taste of that, you can let us know. But Drinkward is the largest dorm and also the newest dorm on campus. So it was built around 4 or 5 years ago. So still kind of developing a culture, but it's one of the quieter dorms. So we do not have a speaker suite. And it also has a couple different types of living. So on one side of the dorm called the O side, we have like East Coast hall style living. So a couple of rooms in a hall and then a shared bathroom. And then on the other side, on suite side, is suite style living. So you're living with, I think, around 5 to 6 people in a suite. And yeah, so it's a great community. Everybody's really caring. We have the largest residential life team since it is the largest dorm. And they're also going with that more Frosh in that dorm are more first year students. So you do get to meet a lot of people living there.
Yeah, I think someone also asked about speakers. So I have lived in North my past 3 years and we also have a dorm speaker. Which usually it doesn't start playing music really until like 11 typically, and then it gets turned off, I think at either 10 or 11 on weeknights, and then on the weekend it goes past midnight a little. And it's, I guess, like the most important thing I want to emphasize is that like all of the res halls are extremely diverse in their cultures and their community, and there is certainly a place for everybody here at MUD. And even though there's like typically like stereotypes or things like that associated with certain communities, it is like absolutely not homogeneous between like the people that live there. I think that's like a really false conception. Like there's still, like for instance, like people in my res hall, like people, so for some reason, people think like we're all athletes, but like a lot of the people that live there are not athletes, right? So that's like, even though it's sort of like a stereotype, is not necessarily true. And also depending on the kind of like physical setup of the community you live in, I know like Sontag, which is where I'll be moving, is more suite style. And I know often when you have like apartment suites rather than a hallway, people are able to build their community within that suite. So it's more of like a suite based culture rather than across the entire dorm, or maybe it's within your floor or your hallway. And that can also change. And also as there's turnover from year to year, depending on what kind of dorm you're living in, that will change as well. And so, like I said, it really depends. And I like want to emphasize as a final point to like don't stress about where you're placed and like get really into all those details. I think that's really important because as long as you are honest and sort of thoughtful in your roommate form, like I promise you someone will take the effort to put you somewhere where you'll belong. And yeah, I think that's really important. So
Right. Should we move on to the next question?
Sure.
Okay. The next one is about a little bit about athletics. Are athletes usually placed with other athletes?
Yeah, I think that question mostly ends up being a schedule problem, if that makes sense. So like MUD will sort of typically match people that have similar like sleeping schedules or noise habits. So athletes might, for instance, like have to wake up earlier because of practice times. And so simply because of that, they may be matched to one another, or just sort of like other facets, if that makes sense. But I think that would be the main reason why they would be matched together. And like I said, it really depends. I know like for some reason my first year, there were a bunch of like quote soccer boys in my dorm my freshman year. And I don't really know how that happened. Maybe they were put together on purpose. But like on the flip side, there were like cross country runners that like didn't like having speakers because they all had morning practice in the morning. And so they lived in other dorms, which like makes complete sense. So I think it's more of like a noise and scheduling and culture thing.
Sort of related, if I may add to that question.
Yeah.
How are students able to request roommates? Do you guys know about that?
Yeah, I did request a roommate my freshman year. I met someone on the admitted students page, and we started talking, and he was cool. I played football, and I was gonna play at CMS, and he had played in high school, so that's what we kind of bonded over. And then on your roommate matching form, if you guys both say you want the other person to be your roommate, then the other person will be your roommate.
Yeah, I wouldn't stress too much about that though if you feel like you don't know anybody coming into the freshman class. I would say probably the vast majority of people are do not accept request roommates, instead are placed with others.
I think Maurice, you're the first person I've ever heard who has requested, so that's impressive.
Yeah.
I think like another thing to consider is like, I think like I'm sure most of the time like finding a roommate like that works really well, but I also think it's important to note that there's some more like I guess like personal questions on the form, such as like sleeping habits and like cleanliness habits and stuff that you might not like, you know, talk about with like a new friend. Like, hey, like how often do you do laundry? You know, like is like a bit of a weird question to ask. So I think to that end, the form also has benefits because obviously that information is private, but whoever is like looking at them anonymously will be able to like also make an informed decision from that perspective.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to our next question. It's about laundry at MUD. So are the laundry rooms close to the dorms, and how often do most MUD students wash their clothes? I love that question. The answer
really
is,
got me.
if I'm not remembering incorrectly, I think all the dorms have laundry rooms within them. Yeah, so you don't have to go anywhere off campus or anything to do laundry. It's very convenient. I cannot speak as to how often most med students wash their clothes. I mean, they wash their clothes often, I'm guessing, but you know, you're an adult, you're gonna live on your own. It's a good experience to set up a schedule for yourself.
Yeah, I think if it like gets to a point where it's like actually problematic and maybe it like is like, you know, a function of like a mental health issue or like a scheduling or something like that in like relation to laundry, that's sort of like what we mentioned earlier, like mentors are there in the community for. The point is like they live in your dorm amongst your community. So maybe if your roommate is concerned for you, they might bring it up with their mentor who is able to talk to the student and help them work through it at like a very like chill, like casual, because they typically are like sophomores and juniors. So in terms of that, I think that's important. But Laundry's pretty chill. Except on like Saturday and Sunday mornings are you gotta fight to get a laundry machine. But like I've noticed like Monday early afternoon is like
Yeah.
a really good time while the machines are empty.
Yeah.
Okay. But the laundry stuff, personally, I try to wait as long as I can. I have like 3 laundry baskets because I didn't want to do my laundry. But so the next question is, what type of inter-dorm activities are there? And are they mainly for members of one residence hall or for members of all the halls? So MUD on campus has a lot of groups that put on events for like the whole campus. There's a group called Muchachos that does that all the time. They have something called crib races, which you might hear about. It's really early on in the year and it's fun. So there's stuff like that. And then if you're referring to what we talked about earlier, mentors will sometimes do events within and between dorms. My sophomore year when I was a mentor at Lind, I did Jeopardy with Atwood and Drinkward. So there's events like that.
Yeah, all of the dorms have email lists, so you can simply like request to join the listing for their activities. And like maybe if your best friend lives in a different dorm and you're always hanging out in their room, it's like super chill to just join them for whatever res life activity they're having. Typically they're really casual. And North dorm like favorite is we do tea time every other week, which is just like usually a 9 p.m. on a Wednesday where we have like tea, hot cocoa, and then we also get Trader Joe's snacks. So like people love cheese and crackers and baguettes and cookies and stuff like that. And it's really just like a space for people to come and like decompress and like talk and like, you know, see people and get some tea. But then we also have other types of dorm activities that are more meant on like sort of like diversity building or inclusivity building that are might be more themed. So I think like this past semester as part of my res life team, I think we all had to do like a sexual health and wellness activity, but it was like Jeopardy themed. So we like went through and like learned about that. And they're all optional too. Like we can't force people to come to them, but since your mentors are usually part of your community and it's someone you'd be friends with anyhow, like they get decent turnout. And also like food is typically a strong incentive. Mudders love snacks.
All right, moving on to mail. How does a student receive mail? Yeah, so we have, like Ginger mentioned earlier, we have a mail room, and basically you are given an address when you, like a little bit closer. I think you guys probably get it in like late summer, maybe late July, early August, if I'm remembering my year correctly. And with that address, you can do Amazon packages, letters from people, basically anything that you would normally mail to another address can be sent to MUD. And you get a email notification from the mailroom when a physical package arrives. And for letter mail or for things that are delivered on campus, such as homework, you have a mailbox that you can check in the Platt Campus Center. So that's how we do mail.
Mail is really good at MUD. I've never had a complaint.
Yeah, it's been great.
Wait, do students get individual like number addresses, or do you just all mail to the same address?
No, you all mail to the same address.
Got
I mean,
it.
it's like tricky, right? Like each student has an individual number, like 1, 2, 3, for instance, it's 3 digits. And like, if you want to be like a homie, you could put it, I think, in the name. So like when my mom sends me Amazon orders, it'll be like Ginger 1, 2, 3 Schmidt. But like, it doesn't really matter because they can still look your name up. It just makes the filing system for them easier because when you go to the mailroom, you tell them their number and then they'll bring the package to you. And then also you have like your little locker that has your number on it. But that's like, if you don't put your number, you will still get your package, I promise.
Cool. Thank you guys. That was just an old person not having been in the mailroom in a long time.
Yeah, of
So
course.
thank you for the clarification. Go ahead and move to the next question.
All right. Can we request a single room as a frosh? I believe the answer is yes for certain reasons, but that might also be a good thing for Dean Marco to talk about when he arrives.
Yeah, I
don't
think
know.
you can certainly try to ask for a single, but typically if it's like a disability related thing, we have like Title IX and like an office that handles those requests. So they're like private, and like if they're like it's like a medical thing, like MUD I think is super cool about that stuff and will definitely respect it. But otherwise, if it's sort of like a non-medical thing, you can, I think, ask on your form, but I'm not sure we guarantee singles to freshmen, like on a broad basis. So
Jason, again, would you guys say most first year students coming in have a roommate?
no, I don't think it's common, not from my knowledge. But um, like I think it can be nice to have a roommate. For me, like I really liked having a designated friend, and it was nice to say goodnight to someone. It's like a little cheesy, but like I think moving into a new community is always hard, and living with someone is nice.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Would you say most incoming students are assigned into a double where they will be assigned a roommate?
Oh, yeah, most students have a roommate. There are also some triples on campus, but the triples are really massive. So,
Yeah, actually, this is probably a good time. I feel like we're going to get a question about triples. I know I had questions when I moved in. I lived in a triple my first year. Drinkward dorm has triples, as I think Case might now, and maybe Atwood, if I'm remembering correctly. Some
the
of the
Atwood
outer
L's,
dorms.
I think, are triples now.
Yeah. So I know my parents were super worried about me living in a triple coming in. It can seem like there's not a lot of space, but I promise all the triples are pretty huge. And it's definitely, I thought it was a great experience. You get two friends instead of one. So it's even better in my opinion. And, you know, it's just more people that you get to meet and hang out with. I would not worry about space at all. So if you're super stressed, if you get placed in a triple, I wouldn't worry about it at all. It was a good experience for me.
Our next question is, can you speak about what living in a suite is like, and how many freshmen typically end up in suites? So South is a suite dorm, Atwood's a suite dorm, Sontag, Lind, and Drinkward has some suites. Is that all?
And Atwood, I think, has some.
Okay.
Kind of, right?
Is that like,
There's like
Atwoods are
different
Yeah,
suites.
is-
They're suites.
Okay.
Yeah, they're suites.
is that like
Um,
a third of the frosh, half of the frosh?
Yeah, a good
Yes,
portion of
yes,
the
it is.
frosh I think end up in suites.
Yeah, probably like 30% if I had to say. Suites are nice because you get like a living room space in addition to your room. So it's like a little bit of extra private living space. And my understanding, don't quote me on this, but suites actually fill out a Google form for like the room draw purposes. Suites will fill out a Google form requesting like, oh, we want our suite to be all women or all male, or like, you know, we are a very quiet suite, or like, oh, we plan to have music playing in our suite all the time stuff. So that information is also collected in terms of placing frosh. And I know a lot of suites end up forming like a really strong familial bond, which I've never lived in like a suite, but I have a lot of friends who are like a family, and like they will have dinner once a week together, and it's really cute. And the upperclassmen will sort of take in frosh and sophomores into like the doubles or triples in the suite to fill it up. And I think it's like a really positive experience. Suites are really fun and people really enjoy them. But I've never lived in one, and I, you know, obviously I haven't lived in it, so I have nothing to miss. And I also enjoy living in my dorm because we have a courtyard that's people like to hang out in instead. So I still feel like I have like a community space. But yeah, I think Maurice has actually lived in a suite.
Yeah, I've only lived in suites. I really enjoyed it, especially freshman year. I got to meet upperclassmen. I was a freshman and there were sophomores and there were juniors. So it was like almost all the ages. And they just were able to give me a lot of advice. We would watch movies all the time. They're really cool people. I talked to them after. I still talk to them now. It's really fun. You guys get really close. Honestly, I think it's the best, but it's really cool.
Cool. So our next question is, Becca, unless you wanted to add anything.
No. Let's move on.
Okay,
now.
cool. So our next question is, do all dorms have kitchens for students to use? And the answer is no, not like physically present within every single dorm. However, like if like food is an accessibility issue for you, you can definitely mention that in your form. And dorms like Drinkward have community kitchens in the lounge that are accessible to everybody that lives there. So it's shared amongst everybody. And then on the flip side, Sontag, which is where I'll be living, has them within each suite, sort of like an apartment style. So it depends. And for where I live now in North, for instance, we have no kitchen within our building at all. However, if you desperately need to cook something, South, who is right next door, is super friendly and we're allowed to borrow their kitchen space, although never in my life have I used it. There just isn't really a huge need because people have like microwaves and stuff.
I do want to invite Dr. Valenzuela DiMarco has joined us. If Dr. Valenzuela, if you want to join, activate your mic and your camera. Yeah, cool. So they're just going through the questions, but before we do that, Dr. Valenzuela, if you want to introduce yourself and tell the first year students / their families what your role is on campus and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Marco Antonio Valenzuela, and I'm the Associate Dean of Students and Director of Residential Life. So I oversee housing, residential life, and wellness. So anything that's related to the residence halls, basically I oversee or I help oversee, and we work with F&M, which is facilities and maintenance, as well, in keeping the residence halls up to speed. So.
Cool. Do you guys think we should go back to let's go back to some of the early questions that we sort of reserved for you. So one of the first questions that was asked was, when do students typically receive information for the sort of the roommate matching form survey?
So we're hoping to send out the housing application, which will also have the roommate matching profile attached to it. May 15th, I believe, is when we're hoping to send that out to students. And then we're hoping to, and students should have their assignments. Our goal is by mid-August. And so that's kind of like what the timeline is as of now. And it may be sooner, it may be a little bit later, but the way we're looking at right now, we're hoping that as soon as it's due, because we're making it due a little bit earlier, we'll be able to provide assignments much sooner if everybody turns in everything by the deadline. I think that helps us. I think sometimes what holds us back is not everybody fills out the forms, and so then it's delayed in terms of trying to get everything in and making sure that we assign folks. So that's what the current timeline is, and we'll make sure to communicate with folks if it's any later than that.
And then for the panel, if you guys want to jump to the question about dorm preference, I think I will take the top one and answer and type it down. So.
Okay. So the question asks, are you able to put a dorm preference? And the answer is like, yes, you can certainly put that into the form. And the people that review it will take it under consideration, and I'm sure they'll consider it. But again, there's a lot to dorm culture that's super nuanced. So you may be placed somewhere else because of other factors, maybe because of like who you were matched with as a roommate. So in terms of a simple yes or no, it's yes, but I would not worry about it like Becca and Maurice have both said as well.
Yeah, I think that answers it. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess moving on to our next question. what is move-in day like? So yeah, I have really fun. I mean, I'm assuming you're asking about the general move-in day. I know we said earlier some out-of-state students can sometimes move in a bit early, but for the move-in day for everybody, it's a very exciting process. You know, everybody's arriving at MUD. You get to meet a lot of your classmates, as well as meeting the residential life team who help run orientation. It's a little chaotic, but you know, in the best way. Uh, yeah, I don't know if Ginger and Maurice
Yeah,
want to add on to that.
Move-in is like one of my favorite parts of orientation. I've been, I think, and will be a part of like all 4 move-ins my time here at MUD. And it's super exciting because we have a big gong. We have usually a tunnel of people cheering for you. We have chalk, we have balloons, we have candy, we have swag bags. It's like honestly a huge party. We have like music playing, and we also have like tons of carts. So members of our residential life team will help you move your stuff. I was part of the move-in committee last year, and we're super cool because we get bucket hats. So as you move in, if you see people with bucket hats, you know that they're the coolest people, part of the move-in committee, obviously, Fit Best committee, and also they'll help you move your stuff. So it's super exciting. It's lots of fun, and it's also the first time you might be seeing your roommate, your friends, people in your dorm, meeting your mentor team. So it's a very exhausting day, but it's super exciting.
All right. Yeah, I think we'll move on. Oh, but do come. I will be on the move-in committee this year, so come find me when you guys move in. I'm excited to meet all of you. Okay, this is a question about dorm experience. What is the least pleasant experience you had in the dorm?
I think for me, it would be noise, but not from the dorm speakers, from the 2 freshman boys living 3 doors away who would blast music with their door open. But it wasn't a big deal because I would just get up out of bed and then close their door. But that was, again, my freshman year. So it was like 2 or 3 years ago. And after I like shut their door a few times, I think they like took it more seriously and were much nicer about it. But like that was like not even that bad. It was like maybe an issue for like 1 week max. And I feel like that'll happen no matter where you go. Is people, you know, figuring out how to learn in a community, live in a community. So I think that would be mine.
This is a really hard question because the matching forum does a really good job of putting you in a good dorm, and all the dorms are so welcoming. There's mentors and proctors to help you and stuff. Yeah, I really can't. The biggest thing I could think of was freshman year. It took like 10 minutes for the shower to warm up, which that was a pain. But like, besides that, I really can't think of anything.
Oh, I spilled a bottle of vinegar on my carpet freshman year, but like that was my fault. So it smelled like vinegar for like a week, which was unpleasant.
This is Jason again from the Office of Admission. If I could add to the question, if a student were to have a not so pleasant experience in the dorm, what should they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's something that typically the residential life team will work with you on. So I think the first resource that a lot of freshmen turn to is their mentor or someone from the mentor team. And as a mentor, we are trained to help you get through experiences, whether it be helping you if you have a conflict with somebody over a loud noise or have a conflict with your roommate. So both the mentors and the proctors are always willing to help you with that, and you can reach out to us at any time should you have an unpleasant experience.
And also if it's really a super, like if it's really not working out, and you know there is a point we can move folks, like that is an option if there is space. That's definitely an option. We try to make sure that folks communicate effectively with each other in terms of what the scenario, what the situation is. But if we need to, if moving is the best option, then we would definitely move that. There's no, we wouldn't not move you if that was needed. So.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions and only 17 minutes left. So for some of these, if it can be answered by one person, I think we should try to zoom through them. And so I guess the next one is, how is dorm security? Are there security guards at each dorm, and after a certain time are only residents of a specific dorm allowed in? And the question is, we don't have building specific security officers, but we do have a really great campus security team that will sort of patrol in golf carts. And also, depending on the like physical architecture of the building, there are a variety of answers. So in the building that I lived in, all of our doors actually faced outwards into an open courtyard, like an uncovered courtyard. So pretty much like lock your door, and there was never an issue. But since they all faced an open courtyard, members of our community are really good about looking out for each other. So every, like maybe once a semester, once a year, there'll be an email like, strange looking man, like in the courtyard, like, can anybody claim them? Like, who is this? I've never seen them before. Just because it's such a small community, we've all seen each other. So they'll look out. And then for some of the larger buildings that are, that have hallways, enclosed spaces, and suites, typically there will be like a locked door to your suite and then a locked door to your room. And for the large building, like sort of like the typical dormitory style, the whole building itself will have like either typically a swipe. So you'll use your ID card to swipe in, and then you can also swipe into your door. So it varies. But I don't think Mudd has major safety issues. Claremont is like a really pretty quiet town, and it's like an hour east of LA. So we're like very far from the city. Cool.
Yeah, so moving on to our next question. Do you have an idea of the ratio of students moving out of campus after their freshman year? I don't know the exact numbers, but the brief answer is a very, very, very small number move out.
I'm a tour guide, and so the statistic that we're taught is like 98% of students live on campus all 4 years. So I think that covers most of that. People like it here.
And then just a quick addition, if for the small number of students that do move, is there a particular reason that I guess comes up, Dr. Valenzuela?
For the most part, when folks want to move off campus, it's they just want to move off campus, whether it's for apartments or sometimes it's where they choose to live with their families. So it varies, but for the most part, it's either they live with their families or they just want to live in an apartment.
Thank you.
All right, so for international students, how much space, if any, do we have to store our belongings over the break, like summer, spring, etc.? The answer is that Mudd has storage that international students and or non-international students, domestic students, you're able to store belongings in there. I think there is a small fee, and then you share a pod with other students, but I think that is how most non-local students store some of their belongings.
And the pods are also partially subsidized by your student government. So your student body fees help subsidize that as well. So I think it's like $20 max maybe for the summer.
Okay, are there bunk beds? I'm pretty sure yes, in the triples.
Yes, yeah, we have bunk beds.
I think it also depends how you set it up. This maybe is a good opportunity to talk about F&M, our facilities and maintenance department. I've had really great experiences with our F&M. I lived in a single this year, but I chose to loft my bed. So basically a bunk bed where you only have the top bed. And basically you can submit like a work order request through this online form, and it goes into their system and they'll send someone over as soon as they can. My first experience with them was like little elves. Honestly, they're incredible. Our toilet stopped working, so we sent in a work order and then went to class, and then by the time we came back 3 hours later, it was fixed. So that was like amazing. And then also if you need your bed lofted, or if you want to turn your bunk bed into 2 individual beds, you can ask that as well. Some people prefer the bunk because it gives them more room to have people over as well. Cool.
We can answer this one really briefly. Our room and board price is different if you're in a double, triple, or a suite. The short answer is no. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the only way room and board prices change depends on your meal plan. So we can talk about that a bit. You have a couple options for meal plan: the 8-meal plan, 12-meal plan, 14-meal plan, or 16-meal plan. And you can read about those on the website, but that's how many meals you get per week. In addition to that number, you get a certain amount of flex dollars equal to the number of meals you have. So if you have a 12 meal plan, you get $12 of flex, and that is money that you can spend at the Mud Cafe buying drinks or snacks, or at our late night eatery, Jay's Place, which is open from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. So that's a place that I went all the time freshman year to hang out and get late night food, because, you know, college students, we get hungry. And then I guess also on meal plan, you can use your meal swipes at Mud's dining hall, the Hawk, or you can go to any of the other dining halls at any of the other 4 colleges. So it's a super nice way to get off campus and try food at the other schools as well.
The next question is, are suites multi-grade? And the short answer is yes. Typically there will be like seniors that pull the suite, and then they may take their junior, sophomore friends, and then maybe half of the suites have pre-placed freshmen reserved to live with them. But you will never be in a suite with all freshmen.
Answering a quick question that's a little bit down on the list. Athletes who have to go there early will get their room assignment before they have to move on campus. That happened to me. I moved on like a month early for football, and I was able to get it. So.
Our next question is about COVID-19. I don't know if maybe Dean Marco wants to take this one. It says, what is being done regarding COVID-19 and how is the college responding to the virus? And then additionally, what's the impact? Will the school consider delaying the open or switching to online courses?
I know that the cabinet is still talking about the specifics. As of now, we're working as if we're opening in the fall. If any changes happen, that'll definitely be communicated sooner than later. But I think as of now, we're planning for opening in the fall as usual. And so we're also planning, should we not, or if we have to make some changes or adjustments with social distancing and whatnot. But we are kind of just strategizing on how to do that. So I don't want to say specifics because I don't know if anything's been finalized just yet. So, but we are working on it. We're thinking about different options.
I think in terms of how we responded this year, and like obviously we all have to move home because except for like some students that are like unable to move home, I think there's still some living on campus, but for the most part, students were asked to move home. Obviously our courses went online as well, but I think like the one thing about MUD that is unique is students have a lot of voice and autonomy within our education and within our residential community. Like I know that me and my friends still do board games once a week, which is something we did at MUD. We just found like online sites where we can play together. And also professors have been really great about like meeting and Zooming with me if I have questions or for office hours and so on. And I think there was also MUD students had a few actually petitions going around about like how we wanted grading schemes to change given like the change in instruction. So it's cool to feel like we have a voice when it comes to these things. So in terms of like response, I feel like MUD has been pretty good at like an institutional level in terms of dealing with it. Like obviously it's pretty unprecedented, so it's hard, but I have felt like in terms of everything, it's been pretty good.
All right, next question. Any super essentials we should bring that we wouldn't think about? I think about this every year when I pack for MUD. I still ask myself this question.
I think it's like super nice to have a microwave or at least access to one. I don't know, but I feel like that's like something most people would consider. But that's like because I'm on the 8-meal plan, I guess. So if you're on the 16-meal plan, maybe you don't really need anything at all.
And is there a website they can go to find out what is provided?
I'm sure there
I
is.
think the answer is yes. Maybe
Sorry, I
Ginger
thought
knows
that was a
what it is.
softball.
I think the answer is yes. I know when I was a first year student, some of the Res Life team put together a list of what we should bring, and I would be highly surprised if that type of thing didn't happen again. So I would look out for that closer to when you guys are going to move in, maybe in the middle of summer.
I think if you like longboarding or if you like biking, there's definitely space on campus for that. So if you like skateboarding or longboarding, like you should totally bring it.
And just to add another part to that last question about what to bring, any advice on like buying things in advance and making sure that you have everything, or should you wait, and what should you be waiting for, and what are things to consider in terms of planning for, you know, the things that you hope to have in your room, you know, have access to?
Yeah, I would definitely wait on, if you're, you guys, I believe, will all have roommates, so I would wait on microwave, fridge, things that you would be sharing with your roommate, because if you buy it in July and your roommate does the same thing, and then you guys meet together in August and you're like, hey, I got a fridge, and they have a fridge too, that's kind of annoying that you guys both bought it. So I would wait as long as you can, wait till you find out your roommate and you can plan with them. Just buy things that you yourself will use.
Your suite mate might even have, like my freshman year, I didn't have a microwave in my room, but my suite mate did. So it was like super chill. And I guess in terms of bringing items,
is a list
like
online.
Okay.
Oh, there's already
There
one.
is a list
Nice.
online of what you
People
can
at
and
Mud
can't bring.
People at Mud are super nice also about sharing resources. So if you really need something in an emergency, you can send an email out to like the dorm to ask, and people like almost always respond to those. And additionally, your upperclassmen friends and your mentor are typically willing to drive you to like Target or to like a grocery store if you need to. Like that's not really a problem. We're super friendly. So the next question is about the bathroom situation. So the building that I lived in has Jack and Jill style bathrooms. So a lot of the inner dorms are like that. So that would be Northwest East. All have Jack and Jill. So there was technically a bathroom in my own room. I never had an issue. I really liked that setup. Other types are suites where you have one bathroom with like maybe 2 showers for the whole suite. So it's connected to the living room. And then finally, we have like hallway style bathrooms. I don't know if Becca, you want to talk about that kind because of drink word?
Sure, yeah. So I think, yeah, communal bathrooms can be a little bit annoying, but that being said, I have had very few negative experiences with them. I mean, I never had to like wait for a shower or anything. You also have like 2 bathrooms on each floor, as well as a bathroom for the whole, like a bathroom that's on the bottom floor of the dorm that you can get into. So yeah, I haven't had any super negative experiences with it. So I wouldn't worry about whether you're going to have a Jack and Jill style bathroom, a suite bathroom, or communal bathroom. I think it's totally fine either way.
Also, if you're super uncomfortable of sharing a bathroom with someone of the opposite sex, that is, I believe, a question that's mentioned on the roommate matching form. So we'll, like, the people take that into consideration, and we'll honor that.
All right, so next question. How much does dorm life contribute to your time at Mud? We addressed this, I think, a tiny bit earlier, but we can like briefly talk about it. Dorm life is, I think, has been a big part of my experience, at least. That's how I met the majority of my friends before I started meeting people in my major. And it was just a great way to feel like I wasn't alone at Mud instantly, since all the dorms are very welcoming and opening to frosh, and they want to make sure that you feel like you're belonging in the community. So I haven't heard of any like negative dorm life experiences.
Cool. Yeah, I think these next 2 are more directed at Dr. Valenzuela. Are all first-year students required to have a meal plan?
Yes, all first-year students are required to be on the meal plan. And then depending on where you live, your your sophomore, junior, and senior years, you can get off the meal plan if you live like in Sontag, the Atwood Efficiencies, or in Drinkward, the suites. Basically, if there's like a full kitchen, you can get off the meal plan, but not until your sophomore year.
And then next question for you, how does health and health insurance, I guess healthcare and health insurance work?
I know that if you have your own health insurance, then you keep your own health insurance, but I also know that there's SHIP, which is the insurance provided by the school. And we also have student health on campus that is also available as well. And you'll get information about SHIP. You basically have to make sure you opt out of it so you won't get billed. So when you receive that information, make sure that you opt out of it if you're going to be on your parents' insurance.
So I'm gonna pause this here because there are two questions, which is very tempting to actually address because we don't ever get close to actually answering every question. But at the same time, we are nearing the end of our panel. So I want to make sure I thank the panelists for their time and their thoughtfulness and how they've provided insight into what living on campus is like. I think what I would hopefully, or what I think would be nice and maybe even slightly helpful for a lot of these students, they are nearing that May 1st deadline. So May 1st is next Friday, and some of them have decided where they're going, mostly us, because I don't think they'd be here. Some are still trying to decide where they're gonna go. So if I could get the panel to just sound off on your favorite thing about Harvey Mudd or your favorite memory at Harvey Mudd.
I thought you were going to ask us why we chose Mudd. I was like ready to go. I'm not ready to go if someone else wants to.
Oh man. Yeah, I can go. I think one of my favorite things about Mudd, and actually one of the reasons I came to Mudd, the two main ones, Mudd is very collaborative. So you'll hear about this as you're learning about the school. You know, you're working all the time with your fellow peers, whether they be in your class year or not. So you aren't really having to do homework by yourself, and it's a great way to meet others. And since it's such a small class, you know, 200 to 230 students, you pretty much know everybody, and you're taking the same classes with everybody. So I can like pretty much identify anybody in my year, and it's great to have developed that kind of relationship with them. And then the other reason that I really like Mudd is the focus on undergraduates. So we didn't really talk about research or anything or academics today, but if you look at a big research institution versus what we have at Mudd, it's not as much of a focus on undergraduates doing research or undergraduates working directly with the professors. So that's something that I really love about Mudd.
Yeah, so my favorite thing about Mudd is definitely the people. Like everyone you meet on campus is so nice and they're so easy to talk to, and you'll get along, like whether you haven't talked before at all. It's crazy how nice everyone is and how you can randomly meet someone and then they could be like a lifelong friend. So it's definitely the people here.
Yeah, I think one of my highlights of Mudd is sophomore year as an engineer. We take an experimental engineering course, which culminates in an autonomous underwater robot, which we take to Dana Point, which is a beach. And we actually get to deploy our robot in the ocean. So it's like a massive day-long field trip. We're collecting data, we're writing code, we're debugging robots. And it's cool because all 50 to maybe 70 engineers in your class will be there, along with some student TAs, which are maybe juniors or seniors, and a lot of the engineering professors will come as well. And everybody takes a big bus, and then at the end, Prof. Spencer makes a really cute speech. And like that was just such an incredible moment, because it was like really shows, again, like Becca said, like the teamwork and the collaboration, because I was on a team and there was such a strong sense of community, and it felt like I was with my cohort. And it was also a super fun day. And it's also something we get to do here in Southern California, like go to the beach and play with robots, which is amazing. And I think another thing too about like why I chose Mudd is because I think Mudd students are really well-rounded leaders, and we care a lot about our mission statement, which is understanding the impact of our work on society. That's really important to us. So something to keep in mind is MUD students take about a third of their classes in the humanities, social sciences, and the arts. And my favorite hum is what we say I've taken so far. I'm actually in right now about American studies. So it's really cool to be able to look at the history of American studies and sort of where we come from as a country in relation to some of the engineering I'm doing with med devices, especially with COVID-19, like the intersection of like current events like engineering, med devices, bioengineering, vaccines, and then also sort of like that societal historical part, I think is super cool to have an education in a community that emphasizes that well-roundedness. But again, I could go on forever, but I really like that. So that's important to keep in mind from an academic standpoint. Cool.
And then Dr. Valenzuela, I don't know if you want to chime in. What is your favorite thing about Harvey Mudd and or a favorite memory you've had so far on campus?
I think for me, it is a sense of community that students have. Students really care a lot about what happens on campus, and they have, like what I think Ginger was saying, that they do have a lot of say in terms of an influence in terms of what happens on campus. And I do appreciate that students care so much about like orientation or res life and things like that. I think that's very unique to Mudd in terms of how much students care about what happens in those avenues of how it impacts students. So I do appreciate their sense of commitment and loyalty to Harvey Mudd and to the experience for all students. So.
Yeah, I also totally forgot this. I promise I'll be super fast, but we didn't talk about this at all, and it's really important. And it's the honor code here at Mudd is a major part of our student life, and I think it's why we have such a strong community and so much trust. The honor code is something that you sign as a first-year student, and it's an agreement between students, faculty, professors, staff, and so on. And it's a really big deal because when there are only like 800 students in a community, one person can sort of break trust in the entire community. So everybody buys into it. We have a lot of trust for each other. People look out for each other. You know, if you leave your longboard outside your room for 5 minutes, people aren't going to steal your shoes or steal your skateboard. And so I think that trust and that community building is also a really big deal. So I'm sorry we didn't bring it up earlier, but the honor code is actually a really big part of student life.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you again to our panelists, Becca, Maurice, Ginger, and Dr. Valenzuela for coming on and helping answer questions that our students have. I will just plug that if you do have any other questions, please contact our office. We are your first point of contact in terms of trying to figure out or trying to figure something out. And then if we don't know, we will pass you on to people, either current students, faculty, staff, our colleagues over in the Division of Student Affairs. If we're not able to answer something, we will sort of refer you to them and usually direct you to a person who we believe is more capable of answering that question. The other thing that I will also say is that I think, you know, if it comes down to you having some tough questions to answer, there is, my colleague Maureen is organizing what she's calling, what is it? Office hours next Wednesday from, I believe, 1 to 6 p.m. So she's just gonna log on and be in a Zoom meeting. And if you have questions and you just want a sounding board, I think the folks in our office will be sort of like rotating through that to answer as many questions as we can. And it's just drop in, so you don't have to stay for the whole time. You can just get your, drop in your question, get an answer, and take off. But, you know, best of luck with the decision. But thank you again to our panelists for joining us. And yeah, have a great night, everyone.
Bye.
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 Thanks, Ginger. There's one more question. Oh.